Well, for some analysis on this morning's headlines, we're joined by Bill Bowkett, reporter at reaction.life and political commentator and contributor to Young Voices UK. Good morning, Bill.
Very good morning, Callum.
So a big week for the PM then. Goodness me, there's lots that we can talk about in here. I think I do want to start with the Telegraph. And it's reporting this morning that police officers who guard Downing Street have been interviewed by Sue Gray, that they may have been particularly forthcoming with lots of detail. And the quote that has got everyone's attention this morning from the piece in the Telegraph is from a source who has been speaking to Martin Evans and Lucy Fisher, soon to be of this parish, of course. Basically, this source saying that if the Prime Minister is still the Prime Minister by the end of the week, then this person would be surprised by that. What's your read on the week as it begins for the Prime Minister?
Well, the Prime Minister is certainly on a tightrope in the sense that we've already hearing other reports of the fact that the 1922 committee of backbench Conservative MPs are close to the 54 letters needed to initiate a leadership contest. And now what we're having with this report, quite astonishing actually, that the guards within number 10 Downing Street are going to be interviewed by Sue Gray, the senior civil servant, into this now, long-awaited report into alleged illicit parties during lockdown. And it seems that the scope of this report just is broadening by the day with the new revelations. You now have Downing Street guards, senior Downing Street guards, the Prime Minister himself, Prime Minister's wife, and Carrie Johnson. And now also Sue Gray is going to have access, as the Daily Telegraph reports, to the Prime Minister's diaries and also the pass logs of who has been entering Downing Street as well. So it's going to be quite a very tense week in many ways, because the report is anticipated, imminently. And really, it's going to be the wording and the way in which this report is going to be addressed that could be a decisive and pivotal moment in the Prime Minister's tenure.
It's notable that the story on this on the front page of the Times, Boris Johnson is determined to fight on and still doesn't believe that he broke any lockdown rules as he braces himself for the report, which of course could prove really quite decisive in all of this. I mean, it's worth saying, Bill, that as one investigation nears its conclusion, there are now calls for another investigation. PM under pressure to launch new inquiry into Islamophobia claims, is the front page of the Eye. Cabinet ministers, Nadeem Zahawi, who by the way will be on Times Radio Breakfast this morning, is among them, calling for an investigation after Conservative MP Nusrat Ghani says she was sacked in 2020 because of her, quote, Muslimness. So not only does this bring into sharp focus the sort of tactics, the oversight, the governance of the Prime Minister, but also the way that he has had his chief whips operating. Mark Spencer denies the claim that she made colleagues uncomfortable because she's a Muslim. So he denies the claims, but it does focus our attention on the operation within Downing Street yet again.
It does, and I think also it might not necessarily be down to Boris Johnson himself. I mean, this has been a historic issue within the Conservative Party of allegations of Islamophobia, at least within the fringes. The allegations coming from ex-ministers like Baroness Warsi, also Professor Singh's, the former Equality and Human Rights Commissioner's report back in 2020 or last year, in fact, into the issue about also the lack of transparency in the complaints process, with what seems like no clear decision making as to how complaints should progress and no specified timeframes for resolution. But it's going to be number 10's response to this quite extraordinary allegation from this Ghani that could be very decisive in not only within their support base, but also within the wider internal workings of the Prime Minister and his team. So you have the Muslim Council now saying that needs to be an inquiry by the EHRC, the Equality and Human Rights Commission, same way that happened for the Labour Party when they were accused of anti-Semitism, or within the process anti-Semitism within a party, as well as calls to adopt a definition of Islamophobia as explained by the all-parliamentary political group on British Muslims. So yeah, it's really how they respond. But you have this pushback from Mark Spencer who actually calls, her claim actually defamatory or on the verge of defamation. But you also have ministers who seem to be supportive of Ghani. So yeah, again, an issue that the Prime Minister maybe, wasn't really expecting, but now he has to kind of show strong leadership in how to respond to it.
Far be it from me to wade into the law, but it's notable that she didn't actually name anyone in the piece that was in the Sunday Times, Nusrat Ghani, and Mark Spencer he took to Twitter to reveal that in fact it was him. So anyway, it's just a notable technicality. I think your points are interesting because all of this happening now does kind of point to a wider, I don't know if issue is the right word, but a wider attitude from Conservative MPs, from those in government, to speak out, to try and take on Boris Johnson and to take on any perceived wrongdoing that they feel they have experienced. And I just suppose that is interesting when we put that alongside this story in the Times as well. Rebel Tory MPs are considering forcing the Chief Whip to turn over emails and texts in an attempt to prove that they've been blackmailed or intimidated into supporting the government. There is rebellion from all sides of the Conservative Party at the moment.
There is. It's mainly coming from the backbenchers and senior backbenchers, for that matter. William Ragg, into intimidation tactics, breaking the ministerial code by the party whips, and then also calls from like Sir David Davis to call for Boris Johnson to step back from his premiership. But I'd be really fascinated to see if this week is the moment in which a cabinet minister, breaks off from, the party line and comes out in criticism against Prime Minister. Because with the Gray report, the ministers have been taking this line that we need to wait until the full facts of the report are published by the inquiry before any judgment is made. So if it gets to a point where that report does get published and then Downing Street has to seemingly have to respond to it and defend its actions, then will it result maybe in a resignation? Will it result in ministers, as we've been saying, being more outspoken on issues around, identity and problems within the parties? We saw with the claims by Nusrat Ghani and also by the party whips. So, yeah, I'd be interested to see whether any of those lines are taken this week.
Well, as we head into another huge political week, you can, of course, trust the Times and Times Radio to be with you every step of the way with analysis, comment and explanations on what is going on. If you would like to read more on these stories in the Times, you can pick up the paper, of course, or you can read it online on the website, or you can download the app. To get full access, you need a digital subscription. You can get your first month for free, of course, so go to thetimes.co.uk. Bill, just one other story I want to mention to you. There had been suggestions about a potential delay in the deadline for NHS workers to be vaccinated. But reports this morning, the government's playing down suggestions that April the 1st deadline, that it could be delayed. It's played down the idea that it could be delayed. Of course, there were warnings about staff shortages. I think it's tens of thousands, about 80,000, I think, NHS staff. Yes, 80,000 NHS staff yet to be vaccinated. It's just interesting because of the what this suggests about the idea of compulsory vaccination. Suggestions sort of floating around over the weekend that it could be pushed back in order to give staff more time, and also to try to avoid any shortages from having to effectively boot unvaccinated staff out of the NHS. But now it seems like Number 10 might be sticking with that. It's an interesting policy, and it's kind of confusing because there are deadlines and there are worries about it.
It's an interesting policy, but it's also a very divisive one, because the Royal College of GPs are now calling for a delay to have a sensible conversation around the idea of healthcare workers being forced to have a vaccine in order to work on the front line. But as we've seen with other reports, particularly from the Lord Secondary Legislation Committee, the benefits, it seems, from forcing vaccines on staff is marginal, particularly when you have to take on the burden of, additional recruitment and training costs, and the worry also having, inexperienced staff on the front line treating patients at a critical time that we are at the moment in the winter. And also there's been questions as to what effect this would have in driving out lower pay and ethnic minorities that work within the health service who are more vaccine hesitant, and given the fact that any shortage is going to put more of a strain on the health service as we come out of the pandemic. As you mentioned, Downing Street have no plans for a U-turn, but with the 7-day average in cases down, I think 15%, and the majority of the public now boosted, and also the fact that many of these staff are still able to have knowledge on, running blood down for emergency transfusions, treating critical patients, you've got to question what impact or what benefits mandatory vaccination would have within health service.
Bill, thank you very much. Really nice to speak to you this morning.
Thanks so much.
Catch you again soon. That's Bill Bowkett, reporter at reaction.life and political commentator and contributor to Young Voices UK. A few more